Darren McClellan. Welcome in, man.
Thanks so much.
Good to have you on.
Be here. Yeah, fired up.
We were just talking a little bit before the show, how long we've known each other. Crazy, right?
It's scary to think how long I've been in the industry, especially when I meet new people. And then I'm like, now I'm dropping double digits on like more than 2 decades. It's like kind of alarming, but also, sorts of pride for sure.
Yeah. So you and I, we met, at Back Bay Funding, you and I met, right? I came in from my first brokerage I've ever worked for, and I was looking for more money. And Dean and John, they were offering some amazing splits. Little did I know there was going to be very little support. But, I figured it out over time, right?
For sure. Well, one of the challenges when you have operators that are also actively originating or transacting the business, then like it's hard to do both, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard to be a great leader and a great mentor and deliver the support. For sure, That was a challenge.
Yeah.
What year did you start there? Obviously I remember when you started, but what was the year?
It was 2003.
Okay. All right. So not that long after me. That was like 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah. So early days. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. Cause I got my license in 2002 and I spent a year and a half with that company before, First Capital Real Estate and Lending. And I got my license through them and I worked my way up and I was producing and really rolling down the hill. And then I was like, well, when is this, introductory split going to go away?
Right. When do I graduate?
Yeah. When do I graduate? And they're like, well, we still haven't made a return on our investment and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, I think that there's some other opportunities out there. And, that's when I went searching and found John and Dean. Great guys. Yep. Love those guys.
Yep.
Yeah. And John, kind of took me under his wing after he saw the potential in me and everything like that. So he's been a great mentor of mine over the years. But we all eventually, move on. I thought you were a lifer.
There was a period of time I thought so too. And, honestly, I have nothing bad to say. It was a great journey for me. And yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think when you're early in your career, you need those mentors, you need those people that can like fire you up or inspire you, or you can just see what they do. I remember sitting in Dean, like just listening to Dean cause he's so good on the phone, just like listening to him rap out with clients and build that rapport. And that was like, that's him. Like that's his whole thing. And he would kind of scribble notes down on the app or kind of on a loan app, but like he's a master of that.
Yeah.
And that, talk about a lifer. That's Dean. Like he's still originating. He's, long time in the business. 30, 40 years in the business at this point. Like he's still at it.
Yeah.
Like Dean, that's God bless you. Yeah.
Yeah. He loves it though.
He does.
He crushes it.
It's all he knows. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He's great. He's such a natural, that's totally his thing, right?
I'm going to have him on here.
You should.
Yeah. He's very interesting.
He would love that.
Yeah.
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 Very
He'll
outspoken.
beat me up a little bit though.
I'm sure he will. Guaranteed. Yes. That's part of his charm, maybe.
It's so funny because, we started that insurance agency inside, Partners Real Estate and Partners Direct and all that stuff like that. And I was saying, on one of the shows, I said, I started an agency inside a mortgage and real estate office. He sends me a DM. When did you start that insurance agency? When were you,
Of course. Of course. He, of course, wants credit for everything.
Of course.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I was trying to generalize the statement just to kind of keep the flow of the show going. I didn't need to know. I didn't know I'd need to put references and footnotes.
No. It's impossible. What are you going to do? Like, yes, I get it.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
So how you been, man? You've been working hard.
I've been great. Obviously this year has been a really unique year in the space and a challenge for sure, a big adjustment from like kind of the tailwinds we had for really like 3 solid years of very easy time particularly in the mortgage business, also probably in real estate from some respects. But yeah, we just had like an incredible run there. And then all of a sudden, it's like somebody hit the e-brake and now you're like, whoa, what do I do? And it's for sure been an ego check, a mindset adjustment, trying to kind of figure out like what do I do now, given the fact that interest rates have almost tripled, right? Mm-hmm. People aren't dying to borrow money at those rates. It's just been a very unique market. So for me, it's like I just doubled down on personal development, personal growth. That's really where I've channeled a lot of my extra time and energy. Is for a year I've been in an incredible program. It's called L360. Props to those guys, an incredible kind of business and life coaching program that I decided to invest in, which has been really helpful because it's been really a tough market for a lot of people. And a lot of guys are getting out of the business right now. I mean, it's pretty.
Reminds you of 2008, huh?
I've been trying to make those comparisons. I mean, what comparisons do you see between today and 2008? I mean, if you could, speak to that.
That's actually a great question because someone asked me one time, actually it's one of my current business partners in Rock Real Estate, Ramon Casas. We were having brunch one day and he's like, dude, you have an amazing story, man. But did you see it coming in 2008? And I'm all, you know what? I didn't see it coming. I was actually one of those people who thought it was never going to end, right? And it wasn't my fault personally. It was the lenders' faults, right? Because they said everything's okay. We're just going to be readjusting the programs, keep selling, keep doing what you're doing. And we thought, hey, everything's going to be fine, right? And then one day you come in and there's nothing for us to sell anymore. And then we're like, I mean, gosh, I remember we used to have the whiteboards on the walls where you put the name of the borrower and, it's called a scrum board, right? Yeah. So you want to move them along through the transition of the loan process or the application process. We had all these loans. I think it was like, I want to say it was like 36 million or something like that, right? And we had all these loans. They were appraisal ordered, rates locked. And then we came in, and at one point there was like those lenders that we locked those loans with, they weren't even in business anymore. Yeah. So it was like we didn't have any way to restructure. Like now we would be able to just go, okay, we'll just go to a different lender and write it there. And our scrum board turned into, let's write all the lenders down on the whiteboard and see who's going to close first. It kind of became a little gambling game between us. Yeah,
I forget, there was a website that was like the Implodometer or whatever that was like talking about all the banks that were going out of business. But it was almost like, it's like if you went to a fast food restaurant, you place your order at the window, you maybe even pay for the food, and then by the time you get to the pickup window, there's nothing there. You're like, wait, I already placed the order. Yeah. We're already this far along. What do you mean there's no food in there? Like, I just placed the order.
Yeah.
And it was that quick. The music just stopped almost instantaneously. Yeah, it was a crazy time. And I think for me, it was just unsettling because it was just constant barrage of negative news, right? Yep. It was like you're watching your portfolio. If you had stock at that time, get crippled. Your everything is, it was constant fluctuation and challenges for sure.
Even the news, the news was kind of trying to, shade it a little bit, right? You just were like, oh, this is just a temporary, situation. Everything's gonna recoup, and then all of a sudden, everybody panics and floods the market with their properties, and there's more inventory than there is, buyers, and then there's no loan programs out there, and so as a result, people are dropping their prices on their homes, and then you can't sell them and short selling them, and all of that kind of stuff like that came along. So in reality, what I'm seeing now is something completely different.
1,000%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the Fed raising the rate is not going to do anything for inflation because there's too much money in the marketplace, right? COVID caused them to print millions of dollars, and all of those people weren't financially savvy or smart enough to say, hey, this is only temporary, let me hold on to this. They went and spent it.
Yep.
And they flushed it into the economy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So you would have to raise the Fed rate, the prime rate, to 20% in order to stop what's happening.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging for sure. I mean, I think, the one thing that obviously hindsight being 2020, I mean, I've just become way more data dependent now. So when I look at stuff, I'm just always trying to study the numbers, study the data. So if you're thinking about getting into the mortgage business, real estate business, or you're an investor, like trying to understand the math, super helpful for me. And that's something that I've had to learn over time because I used to go off gut instinct. And at time, like my instincts, I was very unclear on what was going on. I mean, I felt like lending was irresponsible, right? I mean, you could literally fog a mirror and I could get you a home loan. It was that simple, right? Like you just basically come in, you say, hey, I make this amount of money. You didn't even have to verify your assets. Nope. if it made sense for your line of work, we could probably get you a home loan, right?
And you could have you could do foreign loans, right? I mean, we used to be able to do loans for people with a matricula. They didn't even have a license.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was crazy. And then like I always think about, I did these loans for this bartender, Benihana. Benihana is this great Asian restaurant that was around that, they cooked in front of you. And so I was like, this guy was buying, like, I remember doing like his third loan for him. Somebody had referred me the client. I'm like, how's this guy buying 3 properties? And, he was speculating, right? He was investing because the market was running up at that time. And he clearly, like, if things went sideways, he wasn't going to be able to afford all those properties.
Yeah.
But he could qualify, right? So like he could just keep borrowing money. And I think what happened, if you look at it kind of in retrospect, is there was a lot of speculative building, right? Builders were building a lot of houses. If we think about Orange County, our market here, there was a ton of new construction from 2000 to 2010. I mean, all over the place. Really, 2000, 2007, there was a lot of new construction.
Yep.
And so we had a lot of new, and that was nationwide too, right? As a country, we were building north of 2 million houses a year. And so building a lot of homes. And if you think about the market, right, it's all based on supply and demand. We had a lot of homes on the market.
Right.
Meanwhile, lending got shut off. So you went from like anybody could get a loan to like not so easy to get a loan. Like
minimum 20% down.
Yeah, and very full doc. We all had to relearn the business. We're like, wait, I got to calculate tax returns now?
Yes.
And they're like, yes, you need to do that. That's how you underwrite loans. But like, we weren't used to that.
Nope. Yeah, CISA, Nina.
Yeah, all those terms. Nina, no income, no assets. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, for sure. It was. And unfortunately, I mean, that was probably irresponsible at the time. It was working because equity was growing, right? So people weren't getting caught. But as soon as that that goes the opposite direction, and it's not like, I mean, a lot of people blame lending for the crisis, for the meltdown. It's really like there was a big capital markets issue, right? There was a loss of liquidity and in the marketplace. But the other thing is that we just had way too much supply and not enough demand, and the demand dropped off like a rock.
But now the difference here is there's not enough supply and there's too much demand.
For sure. Yeah.
And so I personally feel that the generation that is seeing the interest rates at 7%, because back in our day, we were still selling 7% interest rates. We were selling 6.75, 8.75.
Yeah, my first loan was at 7%. That was like when I bought my first place.
Right, and so we thought it would never get down to 2%.
No.
Right? We were like, no way is it going to get down to 2%. Then it got down to 1.95 at one point. So what you're seeing now in the marketplace is the people who have the 2.75 interest rate or the low interest rate, they're like, I don't want to get rid of it, so I'm not going to sell.
No.
And then, taxes have gone up, right? So I don't want to pay taxes on a $1.5 million home, and it's only a 1,500 square foot house. So why not just stay? And so now that's why you're seeing the frenzy when a house does come on the market. There's 20 offers on it, 30% above asking, right?
What do you think is going to happen? I mean, what do you think is going to trigger inventory to come on the market? Because I agree with you. I mean, that's clearly the issue, right? We have way less houses on the market. We've got a quarter of what we had back in 2007, 2008 when that huge crash happened. But what do you think what's going to be the catalyst to try to get inventory in the market? Particularly like our market here, right? If you think about I don't know I know you cover a pretty broad range of areas. You're from Mexico to Santa Barbara. How far will you guys go?
Yeah, so our team, we will do business anywhere there's a good deal, right? Yep. And for those of you who have been watching, that we primarily work with distressed situations. So we're looking for the houses that have mold in them, the foundation issues, and all of those types of things, right? So that makes my job a lot easier because it's a different pond. Right?
100%. Yeah.
There's a different.
You're not competing with the end user for the property. They're not going to want to, like that first time buyer's not going to want to mess with that type of asset for sure.
Although we did see a shift when the Cal HFA loan came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because what it did was
the Dream for All program.
The Dream for All program. What it did was, I'm getting a free 20% down. I can now see myself using my money in my bank to go fix up that property.
Yep.
Right.
Sure.
So you're actually as investors, we're like, what's this person offering this much for this property for?
Right.
They're never going to
drove up prices.
Yeah, they're never going to make the money back, right?
Yeah.
But it's because the end users have now stepped into buying the fixer-upper game, and what they call it house hacking, right? So you buy as a primary residence, you get the benefit of the conventional lending interest rates, and of course, if you got a free 20% down, it's going to give you some more freedom to afford more. Yep. So you drive the price up on those fixer-upper houses, right? Yep. But what is it that's going to make stimulate the market and make things come back in? I think it's going to be those millennials that are looking to buy, and they're like, well, shoot, I don't get a 4% interest rate anymore. Well, they're going to get used to it, and so you're going to see that basically the people who are kind of like saying, I don't want to buy right now because the interest rates are too high. Well, they're going to see that the interest rates aren't going to go much lower. I mean, maybe they'll drop to 5%. A lot of economists are saying we're going to see an election year 5%, right?
Yeah, I think we get back down there somewhere in that range for sure. I'm pretty confident about that.
Yeah, so if that happens, that's gonna drive everything back up. That's gonna drive,
of course.
That's gonna make everybody get back into the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a good time to be in real estate, to be honest.
But how do you create? So I mean, yeah, I agree. So that drives demand in the market, right? So we got more buyers coming in. I think that the data is like if rates drop by 1%, 5 million more Americans can afford to buy, which is a scary prospect because we're already seeing month over month price growth, right? How do you get inventory? I mean, I think that's the big solve that that we don't necessarily have a great solution for in our country is how do we create, I mean, other than new construction, like in our markets where there's not a lot of areas to build, like how do you compel sellers to sell? Do you think that rolls over as they just decide, hey, I'm over this property, I'm ready to do something different because I've been stuck here for 5 years, I'm like just going to do something different now, I want to change? Yeah,
so basically what we find as real estate agents is we're finding that they really truly want to move out of the state. Right? They're not fond of the politics. They're not fond of the taxes and all of the, different things that are going on in the state for perfect example, I have friends that are moving to Tennessee because their school is forcing them to get vaccinations that they don't want to get. Right. Yep. So you're going to start to see more people leave as a result of the location that we're in and the politics that we're in. I just saw something. There was an article that just came out, I think from, I forget who it was, but it literally just hit my desk yesterday. But I think they're saying like 25% of people are going to relocate, or this year. I think it's like a huge percentage. I mean, it's exactly what you shared, and a lot of people are going to the Sun Belt. They're going to Arizona, they're going to Texas, they're going to Florida. Yep. Tennessee's definitely picking up people. I mean, I feel like that Southeast and the southern states, maybe where it's a little more like tax friendly for sure. Those and some of those markets have inventory. I mean, some of those markets there's actually I would say the other thing is affordability, right? Like it's expensive in California for sure, particularly as you get closer to the coast. And so that's the other thing is like, it's rough out there, right? I mean, economically speaking, like it's, we're bordering on a recession and it's challenging. People are like struggling with the cost of things. Are we bordering on a recession, or are we already in a recession and trying to avoid depression?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that's a big debate, right? I mean, you would think like it feels like the consumer, at least the people I'm around, are spending less, which would be, and I think, I guess that's the debate, right? GDP growth, how many quarters of like negative GDP growth do we need to have to kind of garner a recession? I mean, we've definitely had the inverted yield curve, which is typically an indicator of a recession. That's like, they can't call the recession until we're out of the recession is generally the way it works. So it's going to be like, hey, by the way, we were in a recession for these last, 6 months. We didn't call it a recession, but we were, right? Yeah. So I feel like it's going to be one of those things. The
writing's on the wall, isn't it? You know what I mean?
It feels like it for that. I mean, that's how I'm experiencing it for sure. It'll be interesting to see how that's spun in the news for sure.
Yeah. So the other thing too, from a inventory creation perspective, what we have done from a tax base, we've passed this, Prop 19, which allows you to, kind of offset the increase in taxes for you buying a new property, right? So I think it's important that people pay attention to those laws that are in place, so then that way they can afford a bigger house, right? Yep. Stacy and I are a perfect example. I like to call ourselves dinks, right? Dual income, no kids.
Right, exactly. That's great.
So we are in a situation now where we've had the same house for 10 years. I got a 3.75 interest rate on it. It's, I pay less than most people in rent to own a house.
Yeah, that's the reality. Yeah.
Right. But I'm going to have to start taking care of my elderly parents. Where am I going to put those people? Right. So, thankfully those people, but thankfully I was able to, put my dad into a condo, in Palm Desert, which he's settled. Right. Yep. But I still have my mom, and I still have my wife's mom. And so we're looking at it from a perspective of, Sandy, she still cuts hair and, she's still doing her thing, but eventually she's not going to be able to do it anymore. She's 72. Right.
Yeah.
And when if she's not able to do that, her rent is like $1,500 a month with all in.
Yeah.
On a fixed income, that's way too much. That's basically all of her Social Security.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to move her in. But of course, I'm not going to want to have her right on top of us. So we need bigger space. Yeah. So what do? Do we sell our house? No way. Not with that. Interest rate.
Yeah, it's an asset, right?
Right.
That debt becomes an asset basically at that rate, right?
Exactly. So now we have to think about upgrading. Do we go buy another house? Do we pull the equity out and go buy another house and upgrade? Or do we rent and, just own the property that we have? So those are the thoughts that we're thinking right now.
What about ADU? Does it make sense for your property?
Not that particular property. Yeah. We would have to build up.
Yep.
Because, of course, if I'm going to build on my existing property, I'm going to put a pool in.
Yeah. Key, essential, right? Yeah. I don't blame you. Yeah.
Can't have a newly freshly updated house without a pool, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But we've been looking at moving down south towards your area, but I have a listing going on right now with one of my mentees. You were at the open house, right? 2.399 for a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath or it's basically 4 bathrooms.
Yeah, a lot of dough. Yeah.
That's a lot of money. What I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So throwing the property taxes on top. Yeah. It's a big stretch for sure.
So I think, to kind of circle back what these millennials and the Gen Zers and the Gen Yers are going to do, they're just going to end up making more money. They're going to find ways to make more money to afford to buy a house.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that for sure. I mean, I think hopefully as rates come down, that will help sellers make sense that, hey, maybe it does make sense for me to sell and buy. I mean, we're definitely having that conversation right now with potential people that are maybe like, hey, we like to ask the question like, hey, how's your home serving you? Do you like the features and amenities you have? Is there something else you're looking for? How are the schools? Like all those things. Like a lot of people rushed into purchases the last few years because the market was so frantic and they just had to pull the trigger. Yeah. Because if you didn't, you're just going to miss out, right? Like you had no choice. So, and you don't know what the neighbors are like. You don't know how it's all going to play out. And I think there's a segment of that market. There's the other segment. There's like obviously boomers that are aging in place and they're saying, hey, what am I going to do? There's no place for me to go. Taxes, all the different variables that would encompass a decision like that to sell, that kind of legacy asset that they've owned. And then I think if I look at my generation of people, like, I don't know, I always think of like there's chapters in your life, right? Like every decade that goes by, you're kind of like in this different place. If you're a young person just getting started, maybe like 20 to 30, or you're single and you're like doing your thing and you're working and you're hustling and you're doing all the stuff and maybe you're having fun. And then all of a sudden, like right around 30 in our country, 33 is the average age of the US home buyer. So now you're thinking about nesting and like that period of time, you're just thinking like maybe starting a family. You don't need a huge amount of space, but then like as the kids get older, you're like, shit, how do I get more space? I want a yard. I want all the nice things that would allow my family to have like a great lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. And so I that's like, I don't know, people go through those periods. And then I think when the kids move out, then, the couples start looking at each other like, oh, maybe we don't need as much space. What would this look like? I think people go through those phases. And so I think you have to stay in rhythm with your clients or your people to say like, hey, where are we at? And is this, how are things working for you right now? And just from a place of service. But I think also, hopefully as rates come down, sellers or potential people that want to maybe sell can make sense of it, right? Like the gap isn't so wide. And so I think
that's also about education, right? Because I think that's one of the biggest things is fear. They're afraid of if they sell their house, they're not going to be able to continue to afford whatever upgrade that they make, right?
For sure. Yeah.
But the gap of what they sell their house for versus and what they buy their house for it should really kind of offset it a little bit, especially if you're taking advantage of those tax laws.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in theory, I mean, even with a higher interest rate, maybe that creates a better tax deduction. So you're outside of the, the standardized deduction. Maybe you get a little benefit because that higher interest rate. I think the other thing is like, people generally are making more money when you look at like wage and job growth. I mean, people are, according to, I think ADP, non-job changers made, an extra 9% over year. And then if you switch jobs, it was like 15% higher. So that, kind of keeps pace.
Well, and the side hustles too, right? Sure. COVID brought in a whole new era of being able to, work from home.
Yeah.
So, you're not having to spend as much time on the road, battling the traffic. So, we all have the same amount of hours in the day. How are we using those hours to help us, achieve our goals, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's such like it's an interesting, I would say like philosophically, the place where I sometimes like I'm in this, I just got back from a trip to Europe and they definitely live, I would say in a lot of places they live smaller. Mm-hmm. They don't maybe need as much. They don't have as much crap as we do,
mm-hmm.
Like they're not consuming as much. And our system is based on people buying a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And when we don't, like, we got shopping centers everywhere. We got malls everywhere. Like we just consume. It's just, It's been our cultural narrative for a long time. And so you go there and they're like, man, I'm just happy with my cappuccino. I got my croissant. Like I'm good. Maybe a glass of wine. Like they're just enjoying life. And there is something to be said for the simplicity. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we get back to that place culturally. Like it would be nice if we could simplify a little bit, but I know it's a big gap right now that we have to try to
I don't know
there.
about that in this society for sure. I mean, this is a, keeping up with the Joneses society, right? I mean, people are living beyond their means. They want the BMW or the Tesla or whatever new electrical vehicle that's coming out.
Yeah.
Speaking of EVs, I mean, what's with all these kids in the freaking e-bikes, man? Jeez. I got to tell you.
Yeah. Is that upsetting you?
I mean, I'm like, I remember I used to have a driver's license to drive a motorized vehicle.
Yes.
And now we're just handing out these e-bikes.
Yes.
I was driving home yesterday from my grandpa's house because I was giving him, I dropped him off some food and made sure he was fed and all that stuff like that. And it's summertime, so all the kids are out, 50 freaking e-bikes just everywhere. It's like they got their own traffic jam. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is crazy. Yeah, I agree. I think, unfortunately our public transport is weak. So they are trying to find ways to like get out there. Parents are kind of on board because it's like, that's free transportation, right? Like, hey, just take your bike, you can get there. And then the e-bike, now they have, a bigger range, right? So yeah, I mean,
and they're doubling up on the things. You know what I mean?
At one point, I can't even
feel like an old man right now.
I can't even tell you how many bikes were in my driveway. Like we're I'm a full perpetrator of that. Like, you don't want to see how many bikes we've had over at my place. It's like a constant, like, hey, you got to sell something. You can't get anything else. We got to sell some stuff. So that's what's going on at my place.
Yeah, I love it. But ultimately, keeping up with the Joneses also creates that lack of buying power, right? Mm. You're over compensating for something that you can't really afford, but you just want to have that flashy look, right? So I think that's a big factor especially for the younger generation. Me, I have a paid off car. You and I both have been very similar in our lifestyle. Yep. We've always had paid off cars, right?
Yep.
I don't like the car payment,
Yeah.
But everybody will actually go and buy a Tesla for $1,000 a month, but they can't afford it. But hey, I got a Tesla. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I'm cool with cheap debt, cheap money. If they want to give me cheap money, I'm cool with that. Mm-hmm. I don't like the expensive money or the, financing stuff that's depreciating. Ideally, I'm financing stuff that's increasing in value and not decreasing in value.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think, unfortunately, because we put such a premium on like consuming and experiencing things, that we've kind of stepped away a little bit from the financial literacy stuff. So I've definitely like doubling down on that from a business standpoint. We're really trying to coach and teach that.
That's tremendous because I don't think enough people have the education, nor do they seek it out. And then the attention span is so low that they're just going to like short, little reels, mm-hmm. and then all of a sudden they're a pro at it, right? But that's also kind of what we're doing on this podcast today, right? We're trying to get people to follow our content.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not sexy topics. I mean, financial literacy, it's not something like we're like dreaming about, so it doesn't necessarily move the needle in the short run as far as like something that feels good, but man, it feels good if you make progress. And I think, I think the people that spend some time on it get rewarded. Those people that make good choices, steadily, consistently over time tend to do well. So I try to take people that are, somewhere in their journey and see what we can do to lean into them and teach them stuff, how to buy real estate. What does that look like? What's the future financial impact of that decision? Once they get that first house, how do they buy the next house if that's a goal of theirs? Yeah. What are strategies they can use? So we're really like as an organization doing a lot of that internally. So we actually did, yesterday was a big financial literacy training with a lot of the employees in the organization because it's tricky right now in the mortgage business. So a lot of people are struggling, right? So, hey, can we, within our own organization, what are things that employees could be doing to better their financial situation? Is there things they can do, costs they could reduce? And then how can they make more money, right? Was kind of what you talked about earlier. It's like, how do we grow top line revenue? How to reduce expenses? That's kind of the game of financial literacy. And then ultimately once we get kind of like our kind of our baseline expenses down as low as possible, then we're ready to start maybe buying and accumulating more stuff, real estate, whatever that is, collectibles, whatever those things are.
Yeah. So speaking of social media, you've been crushing it in social media, man. Like I remember we were sitting in your office one day when I was coming over and talking about whatever we were talking about, but you're like, dude, I'm going to start making a big push for social media. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, I'm all on board with it. Check out what I'm doing, right? But like you took it to the next level, dude. What was the driver for that?
Man, I mean, I wanted to, I've always been of the mind, like one is I wanted to just challenge myself because I believed in the power of it. And I think, we are in this world of, at least in our culture, like the intersection of content and commerce. I believe that is the future. And I think there's a lot of successful brands that are doing that well, where they kind of mix, right? Like if we think about sports, it's content and then commerce, right? Yep. Like they're selling tickets, they're selling jerseys. Like we consume this sporting event and then we buy product. Yep. So the goal is not necessarily like trigger purchase activities. The goal for me is like, okay, what value can I bring to the audience? What things could I teach and share? I think initially you're like, man, I'm just going to explode. I'm going to blow up. Like anything, it's a journey, right? There's a progression. It's like you start with training wheels, you start knocking out a few videos here and there. Maybe they don't go like normally your stuff doesn't hit overnight. I've got a buddy that has done, he had like a huge video that just went crazy and he built a big audience just off like 2 big videos that just went nuts. Yeah. And he's great. He's great at content and I have a ton of respect for him and he knows his stuff as a professional. He's great. But like, I was comparing like, man, why have I not achieved that level of success? So I think one is just start if you are inspired by it and you have something that you want to share with the community or build a community around it. And then 2 is you got to be patient. I mean, you got to be patient. You got to keep iterating.
Consistent. You have to be consistent. You have to be posting daily, right? You can't it's called the algorithm, right? Because you get fed into people's, viewership, right? So if you're posting daily, that means that you're going to stay relevant, you're going to stay in front of people. And then of course the content that you're speaking of. I personally feel that, the reason why I started the Inspired Show was to inspire people to perform at their highest level, use my, 45 years of life experience to be able to share that knowledge and pass it down. But I think some of the content out there is getting a little washed out now. A lot of people are copying each other and just, kind of repeating the same information over and over again, right?
Yeah, I think that's I think people are feeling like they need to check the box. They're like, oh, I need to be on social media to stay relevant or to stay seen. And obviously people are trying to target that younger audience. And so I think that is the miss, right? Is like the audience really dictates, right? Yep. Like what are we interested in? What's going to perform? I mean, I think the one learning I've had recently, which is this, like it has to be compelling enough for people to really consume it because there's so much out there. Like I think to your point, like there's gobs of content. It's endless, right? Like
everywhere.
What am I going to put my attention on?
Now you got like multiple platforms, it's just everywhere, right? So you have to be creative. You have to, think outside the box. You have to bring in captivating, co-hosts on your podcast, so that way you can, get the stuff out there and be relevant, right?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Been watching my my son create content as well, because he's having to learn how to be patient too, and he's doing stuff in the car space, and it's fun checking out. And he's creative. I mean, he's more creative than I am, as far as like, he just thinks cleverly about how to create edits, and he does a lot of music to it and has some quotes and captions. But like, trying to figure out what's going to perform and engage the audience, and it's challenging. I mean, he's doing really cool content, and it doesn't always perform, and so you're like, man, why? So that's the tricky part of content.
I try not to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't want to get into I didn't get so many views on that last, post, right? I mean, and the thing is you can literally say something so like random and it gets the most viewership.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. No, it doesn't make sense. I mean, let's be honest. Like, you're like, wait, why did that do so well? It's like the cat video or whatever it is, the most random thing.
Yeah.
It's like stumbling across nuggets of gold. I mean, you just never know when something's going to hit. So I do think you have to enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I like doing it now.
Yeah.
And I like when people, are inspired or encouraged by whatever message. So that's the part, like, if I can be of service, which is really like my goal these days, is, hey, how can I show up? How can I be like an inspiration?
Yes.
I hate to see people and I don't know if you agree or not, but like, I hate to see fear get in the way of decisions that will impact somebody's future.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that happens with us as people we create those blockages, we create some resistance, we have fears, whatever that keeps us from living the life we want to live.
That's it.
And so I'm always trying to figure out, hey, what could I share that would encourage somebody to take action and create that future they want to have? And so that's probably like honestly, like the real root source of it. But some of that's like data, like, hey, it's okay. Like, you're going to be okay. If you buy a property, like, guess what? Market's doing well. Like, you're going to make money.
There's no bad time to buy real estate. No, and it was proven.
Yeah. I mean, 80,
right?
The track record, 73 wins, 7 losses, 1 tie. Like,
yeah.
Name a franchise that's got a record like that.
There's none. You can't find it.
No.
Right? Wow. This was fun, Darren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime. I'm happy to hang out. Yeah.
We could probably go for hours, so we'll have to have you back on round 2.
Yeah, I think we covered some. There's more. There's some more stuff to uncover. We really, there's a lot more to cover, but thanks so much for having me on.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Well, if you liked what you saw here, please follow us on all of the social media platforms, Inspired Show on YouTube channel, the Inspired Show on Instagram and TikTok. And then where can everybody find you, Darren?
Check me out at Darren McClellan on Instagram, and at TikTok, it's Darren Home Loans.
All right, perfect. And super excited to have you working with my team too.
Yeah, you got a great group of people. I'm excited to see how those guys develop in their careers. And I was impressed. I'm impressed with some of your teammates, and good job. It speaks to your leadership.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
For sure. Anytime.
Have a good day, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody.